I noticed the rule sheet taped inside the elevator before I noticed anything else. Because it wasn't written like a normal notice from management, it looked handwritten and slightly crooked, as if someone had been in a hurry or afraid of being seen. And it read, "If the elevator stops at floor 9 and you did not press it, do not get out." Which should have been enough to make me laugh or roll my eyes, except I had just moved into the building that morning and already felt like something was slightly off. Not wrong exactly, just misaligned. Like the air was heavier than it should be, or like everyone had agreed silently not to look directly at each other. I remember glancing at the buttons and seeing that there was no floor 9 listed at all, just 8 and then 10, which made the note feel like a private joke I didn't understand. So I shrugged it off, pressed 12, and watched the doors close slowly as if reluctant. The mirror inside reflecting my tired face, surrounded by stacks of boxes at my feet. And for a moment, I thought I saw someone standing behind me, even though I had entered alone. But when I turned, there was nothing there, just the faint smell of dust and something metallic. And I told myself it was nerves, new place anxiety, nothing more. The apartment itself was cheap compared to everything else in the city, which should have been my first warning, but I had convinced myself that the low rent was because the building was older, and older places had character, creaky floors and stubborn plumbing, and neighbours who kept odd hours. Not mysteries, not rules written in pen. The hallway outside my unit was quiet in a way that felt intentional, like sound had been swallowed before it could travel. And the carpet was patterned with faded shapes that almost looked like footprints overlapping endlessly. My door was slightly open when I arrived, even though the landlord insisted no one had been inside since the previous tenant left. And when I pushed it open, the hinges made a long, low sound that felt too deliberate to be accidental, as if announcing me to someone listening nearby. Inside, everything seemed normal at first glance. White walls, narrow kitchen, window overlooking another building's blank brick face, and a bedroom barely big enough for a bed and a desk. But there was a second sheet of paper taped to the fridge. Same handwriting as the elevator note, reading, "If you hear knocking from the vent, ignore it. It will stop." I remember laughing then, a nervous laugh I didn't recognize as my own, and pulling the paper down, assuming it was some kind of prank left by the previous tenant. But when I crumpled it, I felt a strange reluctance, like I was breaking a rule I didn't yet understand. The first night passed without anything dramatic happening, just unfamiliar noises, the hum of pipes, footsteps overhead that stopped whenever I held my breath to listen. And once, around 2 a.m., the sound of something sliding gently along the wall outside my bedroom, as if someone were dragging their hand slowly across the paint. I opened the door expecting to see a neighbor heading back to their apartment, but the hallway was empty and perfectly still. And that was when I noticed a third paper taped low on the wall near the floor, as if meant to be seen only by someone looking down, reading, "Do not remove any notes." And I felt a sudden chill because I had already thrown one away. Over the next few days I found more of them, always in places where I wouldn't notice immediately. Inside a cabinet, under the sink, behind the bathroom mirror. And each one contained a simple instruction written without explanation. Close the curtains before sunset. If you hear your name from the hallway, wait until the third call before opening the door. The man in 10B is not dangerous, but do not let him inside. Which would have been absurd if it weren't for how seriously everyone else in the building seemed to take things without ever talking about them. Neighbors avoided eye contact, but nodded politely. And once I caught an older woman watching me from the stairwell with an expression that looked like sympathy mixed with warning. And when I tried to ask her about the notes, she only said, "You'll understand soon," before walking away. The first truly unsettling thing happened on a Thursday evening when the elevator stopped between floors. Lights flickering gently, and the display changed from numbers to a blank line. And then slowly, impossibly, a small 9 appeared. where there had never been a button before, glowing faintly. I remembered the note immediately, felt my heartbeat climb into my throat, and kept my eyes fixed on the closed doors, as if looking away would give something permission to enter. And after a long pause, the doors slid open to reveal a hallway identical to the others, but dimmer, the lights buzzing softly, the carpet darker as if damp. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Just waited until the doors closed again and the elevator resumed moving. And when I reached my floor, my hands were shaking so badly, I dropped my keys twice. That night, I searched online for any mention of hidden floors or building myths, but found nothing, which somehow felt worse than discovering a story, because it meant there was no shared understanding, only my experience and the notes left by someone who clearly knew more than I did. The knocking from the vent began a week later, faint at first. 3 slow taps that paused and repeated, and I sat frozen at my desk listening, torn between curiosity and dread, remembering the instruction to ignore it. And the longer I stayed still, the more deliberate the knocking felt, like someone waiting for acknowledgement, until finally it stopped as promised, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than the sound itself. The building developed patterns after that, small, predictable things that made me feel both safer and more trapped, like the way the lights in the hallway dimmed exactly at midnight, or how the elevator sometimes opened on my floor before I called it, waiting patiently as if expecting me, or how certain doors down the hall were always closed except between 3:15 and 3:20 in the afternoon, when they stood slightly ajar and faint whispers drifted out. I never saw anyone entering or leaving during those times, but I began to sense that the building was less a place and more a system, and the notes were instructions for surviving within it. One evening I met the man from 10B by accident, when he stepped into the elevator just as I was leaving, and he smiled politely, asking if I was new. And there was nothing outwardly wrong with him, except the way he stood too still, barely blinking, as if conserving movement. And I remembered the warning, and felt guilty for pulling my bag closer to my chest. And he noticed. Of course he noticed, his smile tightening slightly as he said, "You've read the notes," not as a question, but as a statement. And before I could reply, the elevator stopped abruptly and the Phantom Floor 9 appeared again, the doors sliding open, and he stepped forward without hesitation, as if welcoming it, then turned back toward me with an expression that almost looked relieved, saying softly, "It's better if you don't stay too long," before the doors closed between us. After that, I started hearing footsteps outside my door at night that paused exactly where the earlier note had been taped to the wall. And once I saw a shadow under the doorframe that remained perfectly still for several minutes before sliding away. I told myself it was just neighbors, but the rhythm never sounded human. Too slow, too deliberate, like counting. Weeks passed and I began to rely on the notes even though I pretended not to believe them, checking corners for new ones as part of my routine, following instructions without admitting I was doing so, and I realized one day that the handwriting never changed, meaning whoever wrote them had been here for a long time, watching newcomers, guiding them silently. The most disturbing discovery came when I found a note inside my own notebook, written in the same hand but using my pen, reading, "You forgot to close the curtains yesterday." And I felt the room tilt slightly because I knew I had been alone. After that, I installed a camera facing the front door, telling myself it was just for peace of mind. But every morning the footage contained small gaps where nothing recorded. Brief missing minutes that always aligned with times I remembered feeling watched. The building itself began to feel aware of me, like a living organism adjusting its behavior. Lights flickering when I hesitated in hallways, elevators arriving without being summoned, distant laughter echoing through vents when I felt too comfortable. And gradually my fear shifted from sharp panic into a dull acceptance, as if I had been here long enough to become part of the rhythm. One late night, I heard my name whispered from the hallway, soft and familiar, and my body reacted before my mind could stop it. Stepping toward the door, counting the calls like the note instructed, and on the third whisper I opened it slowly to find no one there except a new piece of paper taped at eye-level reading. "You're doing well," which felt less like reassurance and more like evaluation. Months passed and I never left for more than a few hours at a time, because returning felt like stepping back into a story already in progress. And eventually I realized I could predict when the elevator would reveal floor 9, could feel it like a pressure change, and one evening curiosity won over caution, and I stepped out despite the warning, finding the hallway empty but filled with doors without numbers, each slightly open, each revealing a room that looked almost identical to mine, but subtly different, as if variations of the same life existed side by side. And at the far end I saw someone standing with their back turned, holding a stack of handwritten papers. And though I never saw their face, I knew somehow that they were the one leaving the notes, guiding everyone, watching. I returned to my floor before they noticed me, heart pounding, and afterward, new notes appeared more frequently, instructions becoming more specific, almost personal. And I began to wonder whether I had crossed a line by disobeying that first rule. The building has felt quieter since then. Too quiet, like it's waiting for something. And sometimes when I pass mirrors, I catch a glimpse of myself holding a piece of paper, even when my hands are empty. And last night, the elevator opened without me pressing a button. The phantom 9 glowing softly as if inviting me back. And when the doors slid open, I saw a fresh note taped inside, reading only one sentence in the same familiar handwriting. "Soon you won't need instructions anymore." And I'm not sure whether that means I've learned the rules well enough to survive here, or whether I'm the one expected to start writing them for someone else. Because tonight, I heard footsteps stop outside my door again, waiting patiently, and for the first time I felt an urge to get up, pick up a pen, and leave a message for whoever arrives next, just in case they don't notice the elevator note before it's too late.